Well, a woman dubbed the Ketamine Queen has agreed to plead guilty in the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry back in October of 2023. She will be the last of 5 defendants, including 2 doctors who have pleaded guilty in the case. Well, joining us now with more on this is Neama Rahmani, who's the former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Good morning, Neama.
Good morning, Genevieve.
Good morning. Yeah, so the woman, Jasveen Sangha, she's pleading guilty to federal charges, including the distribution of ketamine. So what makes these federal charges and not state charges?
Well, Genevieve, drug distribution is both a state and federal crime, and the feds have really the choice to step in. When I was a federal narcotics prosecutor, FBI, DEA, local law enforcement, they would bring me cases, and I would determine whether it merited using the Department of Justice and the federal government's resources. Now, here you have a celebrity and you have a drug-induced death, and I'm not saying a celebrity life is more important, but the practical reality is these types of cases get a lot more attention when their victim is well known. So I'm not surprised that law enforcement brought this case to the feds and they accepted it for prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the other defendants pleading guilty, did she have no other choice but to do the same?
She really didn't. Sangha had no choice. She was facing trial next month, and it was really just a matter of her attorney, celebrity attorney Mark Garagos, negotiating a plea. And she did get some consideration, even though she pleaded guilty or is pleading guilty to 3 counts of distributing ketamine, operating a drug house, and causing Matthew Perry's death. She was able to secure dismissal of the methamphetamine-related charges. Now, even though those don't have anything to do with Matthew Perry, because they're on a higher schedule, Schedule 2 instead of Schedule 3, they actually have more severe potential penalties in this case. So those are dismissed.
Yeah, and so are we seeing a rise in going after people who are supplying drugs like ketamine, or was this case taken a little bit more seriously because, as you mentioned earlier, it involved a major celebrity?
Well, I think it's both. Obviously, you have a celebrity who died, and let's not forget, Sangha also killed another individual, Cody McLaury, in 2019, and she never really faced justice for that. So this is her second ketamine-induced death. And there was plenty of evidence in this case. There were the text messages that we all know about. There was the raid of her home, which ended up being a drug house, and lots of different prohibited substances found. But I think we are seeing a shift here. Ketamine is not a new drug, but it's a newer drug in terms of the abuse. It's a big party drug in Hollywood. Although Matthew Perry was administering it through an IV, it is typically found in a liquid form in a doctor or hospital setting. There are individuals that cook it and turn it into a white powdery substance, and it ends up being used illegally that way. So I think, Genevieve, we are seeing a shift, and we will see more ketamine prosecutions.
Yeah, thank you for providing some context there. So Sangha is one of 5 that's pleading guilty in Perry's death. So how do her charges differ from the other 4? And could there be differences in the sentencing? Does pleading guilty now lessen her potential sentences?
It does lessen her potential sentence, especially with those methamphetamine charge being dismissed, but her sentence is going to be the most severe and significant because she provided the fatal dose that killed Matthew Perry. So I wouldn't be surprised if she gets somewhere close to 20 years in federal prison, probably at least a decade here. And I'm not saying, the doctors won't get significant time as well, but the fact that she has now caused 2 people to die. She was the last to plead. And usually when it comes to these types of cases, Genevieve, the first defendants or the first tend to get the best deals. She pushed her case to the brink of trial. She was the most culpable of the individuals, and not including Dr. Placencia, for instance, and others that really took advantage of Matthew Perry's addiction to profit, because again, she was the killer. She's the one that's going to face the most time here.
And with all the guilty pleas, is that the end of this case, or is this more for prosecutors to work on?
This is really the end of the road. We have 2 doctors who have pleaded guilty. We have Matthew Perry's longtime assistant. We have the drug dealer middleman. And now we have, of course, the source, Sangha, who is the Ketamine Queen. So this is going to be the end of this investigation, but it's certainly not the end of ketamine prosecutions and investigations. To the extent that the drug is used and abused outside of a medical setting, I think we're really just seeing the beginning of investigations and prosecutions like this.
Neama Rahmani of West Coast Trial Lawyers, thank you so much for joining us and providing some much needed context on all of this.
Thanks for having me, Genevieve. Have a great morning.